Hi everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Shaping the Smart Cities of Tomorrow, jointly hosted by Bosch and Milestone. My name is Jeremy, and I've got here with me Jason Ong from Milestone. We've got two other speakers that we'll get to introduce them to you later. But for now, maybe we'll start with an introduction of ourselves. As I said, my name is Jeremy, and I'm the manager of the Integration Partner Program here at Bosch in Asia. What is the Integration Partner Program? Well, it is the program by which we manage our relations with third-party technology partners, such as Milestone, with whom we have, of course, a long and successful relationship with, but more importantly, also a solution that we hope to present to you today. Jason, maybe you'd like to introduce yourself as well.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jason. I'm the Key Account Manager for Milestone. I handle the business development and key account activities for Asia. Now, if you have any questions for us in this webinar, just feel free to type in the chat box. We'll attend to them shortly after what we have presented. I think most of you probably come to join this webinar to understand and feel a bit more about what smart city really is. So I think it's only right and imperative that we talk about what the smart city is and probably start off with some definitions of our own. So probably, Jeremy, what's your definition of a smart city like?
Wow, that's a difficult question. I think when I think of a smart city, I think of a city that is living and breathing. It is alive. And like all living things, it understands what is happening to it, as well as is able to react accordingly. But of course, smart cities are kind of an evolving art, so that over the past 20 or 30 years, as we implement them, the definitions have also started to change and evolve. Different people might have different definitions for what a smart city is. Jason, what is your definition?
I personally think that there's two big components to a smart city. They are namely the technology and people. For the longest time, we have always been very fascinated with putting the latest technology into things. We think that by putting in the latest technology, we are building a smart city. By incorporating the latest technology that we have in different areas, we are making a city smarter and smarter. But in recent years, we start to think that that's not really the case, right, Jeremy?
Yeah.
In recent years, we start to realize that human is in the center of everything. And when you want to build a smart city, what's really important is that you take human as the focus. We want to all build a more livable future for ourselves, for our future generations. And I think that's the important direction to go. So when it's talk about smart cities, we have to focus on people and what do people actually want the most. At the very basic needs, I think everyone wants to be safe and secure. Safety in the sense that we all want to be safe from ecological disaster. Security in the sense that we want to have high security standards in our city. All of us do not want to have a high crime rate in our cities, right? So a smart city to me is one that actually answers to the safety and security needs of its people.
It's very interesting, those points that you brought up. Because, you know, when I think of a smart city, cities are by definition urban areas. So that's where a lot of people congregate. At the same time, it is also a man-made area. And so when I think of what problems a smart city faces, they can be so varied, exactly like you said, ecological, safety and security, all of these things. So looking here at some of the issues that smart cities face, we've got, for example, flooding. Flooding, of course, is a major issue. Now, currently, over in the past couple of weeks, all over the world, we've had serious floods. And if you look at other issues, infrastructure is another issue. For example, how cities handle cyclists is one of the things we will probably talk about later today. The other thing is crowding, which is, of course, an issue in an urban area, but has, of course, become even more of an issue just given the past 2 years, what's happened with the pandemic and all. Now, when I look at all of these things that we have up here, the one that jumps out to me right now is actually flooding. And the reason that jumps out to me is because it is pretty unique, isn't it? When it rains, we have control, of course, over what's happening on the ground, but we don't have control over where it decides to rain. How the clouds move is up to nature itself. And that creates the problem that, you know, flooding is something that can happen in many different locations in the city at any one point. It can happen, you know, with little warning, and it happens all over the place. So yeah, that I think is a major issue. Jason, what do you think?
I think you brought a very good point, especially with regards to the flooding. When it rains, it pours, right? And that's exactly what we talk about. A smart city is actually one that has many different sites around it. Most of the time when a particular element hits you, it's not going to just hit one part of the city, it's going to hit many different parts of the city at the same time. So that brings us to the fundamental of a smart city. That is, we have to answer and understand how to actually manage distributed site. And I think Milestone has a pretty good solutions for distributed site.
You're telling me that Milestone has a solution that can solve these issues here with the distributed sites?
Exactly, that's what I'm trying to say.
Okay,
We have a
well,
very
Jason,
good solution
let's
for
have a
that.
look at it.
All right. So introducing to you all the Milestone Interconnect. Interconnect is actually one of our video architecture that's really good for distributed site. Now, let me explain in a few points why is it so. For distributed site, I think it comes in many different shape, size, and number. So for instance, in a very distributed site architecture, you're probably going to have some of these sites, maybe at the inner part of the city. That's really like a smart building with a high number of cameras. And then when you move towards the end of the island or the city, you're going to look at many remote sites. And these remote sites probably do not need to have such sophisticated needs like what the inner city needs, and they probably just need to have a few cameras around them. So that brings you into a situation whereby the complexity across the different sites is rather different because all of them have their very unique needs. So to connect all of them well, it requires a certain kind of interesting architecture and technology to be able to do so. And I will say that that's probably not the end of the story also, right? It's not just about different sites having different requirements. When we talk about the smart city, we also talk about, at the very beginning, you're probably just going to have tens of sites. And later on, as you move on, you're probably going to have hundreds of sites and thousands of sites again. How do you actually cope and evolve together with what the city needs? That's exactly the kind of things that a good distributed architecture needs to work and needs to have. And I think the Milestone Interconnect fits this perfectly because in this scenario that I'm talking about, as long as each of the sites has a particular variant of the Milestone video management software, you can easily do so to connect all of them together. And what makes all of this even more flexible is that imagine in each of these sites, you might not want to connect all the cameras, right? You probably just want to connect maybe a few cameras, and you can easily do so using Milestone Interconnect. So what does all of this translate to the end user or the customer? What kind of benefit do they really bring to the group of people? Now let's take a look. I will summarize it in two major factors. First, I think it's really a lot about increased security for the end user and the customer because we are talking about easily implementing 24/7 alarm monitoring here. In this case, all the footage or all the video stuff could actually go back to the central site. And you know, central monitoring station, right? They're probably going to have 24/7 security anyway. Yep. So you then actually can put your resource just on the central location, and the remote sites probably you do not need to deal with it so much. So that brings you to the other part of the benefit that it's really cost efficient, right? Because you don't have to put people at the remote site anymore. People at the remote site, probably you do not need to also be there, and you probably don't need to do any training for this group of people at the remote location. So at the remote location, you probably can just let a few cameras run and have a variant of the VMS there. And at the end of the day, at the central site where the people are actually actively monitoring the situation, they can have a good understanding of what's happening. So even if anything were to happen, if you want to consolidate all the evidence, you can easily do so at the central site using Milestone Interconnect.
Wow, thank you so much for that, Jason. I think it was so interesting to hear in detail about all of this, particular kind of architecture. When you described it, I almost thought of it as a sort of like a brain in the center with a web coming out all the way. And at the end, of each of these little tentacles or the web is actually an endpoint. And that's where a couple of cameras might be, maybe one, maybe a few. And I think of these also as an opportunity, because the first thing that needs to be done at each of these locations is to actually understand the scene. And understanding the scene at a remote distributed site is always going to be a bit of a challenge because you don't have the luxury, of course, of having one person stare at the screen. And even then, if somebody were to stare at the screen, we don't know how long they would be able to do that and still maintain their attention. That's where video analytics comes in. When we look at video analytics, there are always a few different places that we can place these analytics. For example, on the edge, or on a server, or in the cloud. I think of each one of these as having their own benefits and drawbacks. You can debate that a little bit in another forum, but for the specific case that we have today, these distributed remote sites, this is where I think video analytics on the edge really shines. And it is here that Bosch has always had its best strength as well. Bosch cameras have had video analytics on the edge for a long time now, something we like to call IVA, Intelligent Video Analytics. So having a look here at what the Bosch camera is capable of, we're able to see that It's able to do 16 video analytics rules, all offered on a camera. Some of these can be more interesting, more different. Others we think of as bread and butter of security. However, what I found is that through careful configuration of these rules, we're actually able to take advantage of the real power of it in order to create a solution that is truly custom for our situation. Let me give you an example of this. We're able to take these normal everyday rules and allow them to be triggered only based on the classification of objects. So what we have on the camera is a special chip that is able to, of course, detect whether an object is a human, a car, a bus or truck, or even a bike. And it is this thing with the bikes that I want to talk about a little bit more. All cities have to deal with infrastructure issues. For example, Singapore is not Amsterdam. Amsterdam has the luxury of dealing with and managing so many cyclists every day, and they have the infrastructure for it. Singapore, on the other hand, has issues with managing cyclists. For example, cyclists like to be where they're not supposed to be, speeding down pedestrian pathways where elderly people and children are walking. And here, there is a need to detect when cyclists are in an area in which they're not supposed to be. And it is exactly here that I actually have a video that I'm going to show you right now. So this is actually happening, by the way, in the Bosch building, somewhere in central Singapore. And if you have a look here, this is me cycling, mask on, one day in the Bosch building, coming into an area that's not a pedestrian walkway, but rather truck parking lots where we're not supposed to be. Right now, you're looking at the configuration page of one of the Bosch cameras. And you can see that as I cycle in, I'm outlined, and there is a flag that marks me as a cyclist. And of course, the area detects that that's where I've cycled in, and of course, the alarm is then sent. Now, I would like to note that, of course, this will not happen if I were to walk in as a human being. That is exactly the point of this, and it is this that really is the strength of the video analytics of the Bosch camera. It was wonderful. Now, look, here as I'm cycling in the sun. Of course, it was a nice sunny day cycling around. It was a difficult day for me. At the same time, when I was cycling here in Bishan, my dear friend Jason was actually seated in an air-conditioned building somewhere else entirely in Singapore. Jason, can you tell me what you were doing that day?
Well, of course, first off, it's not exactly a difficult day for me, since I'm not the one who cycled there. So in my situation, I was actually sitting very nicely in the air-conditioned office in Paya Lebar, where the Milestone office is. So you can see that Jeremy was actually cycling around the Bosch site, which is situated in Bishan. I was all the way in Paya Lebar. And does this actually bring any kind of familiarity here? Doesn't this actually bring us the sense of what we talked about throughout this conversation just now? Distributed site. I'm actually sitting at somewhere that can mimic a central monitoring station that's looking at another distributed site and understanding what's happened at that distributed site. Of course, this can actually happen to just more than one site. A real distributed site probably has a lot more, like what you have been seeing on the screen here. So the Milestone Interconnect allows this to happen too. Now let's take a look at the Milestone UI to see exactly what was happening just now. As you can see in the Bosch camera, when Jeremy is cycling around, there's an alarm that's being triggered. That's the same that you can actually expect from the Milestone UI too. When Jeremy cycles into the area that he's not supposed to cycle into, which I mentioned to him many times, the alarm actually pops up over here. Now, in the area of distributed architecture, in the area of remote site management, what's really critical is that you need to have that kind of alarm. You need to have that kind of notification in real time, right? If something were to be wrong, something happens at each of the site, you need to be able to get this kind of notification, get this alarm where you are at the central location. And I think this is a perfect example of that. But of course, that's not the end of the story like what we have talked about just now. When we went through the list of problems we're looking at just now, one of the bigger chunk of it, or one of the really critical problems that ASEAN nations are facing recently is the issue of COVID. And I think most of us could actually agree with that. So in the area of COVID, many nations of government around the world have been thinking, how can I best control crowd? Because crowd is one of the major factors that leads to the outbreaks of the diseases. And I think that's where we talk about how can you use video technology for other things, not just getting alarm notification from distributed site. How can you actually actively get information such as the statistics or getting relevant footage of whenever things that happens, if they happen, don't happen so well, in your own knowledge or
Yeah.
getting the information out of it, of which that is probably something that I have to show you all right now in the area of the crowd analytics. Now, in the area of the crowd analytics, I think we have some of the very good example that we talked about that is in the area of being able to do forensic search. And you might be thinking exactly what is forensic search here, right? What do you mean by being able to do certain things like retrieving the relevant footages or probably retrieving relevant statistics out of it? Now, the forensic search footage is exactly what we mentioned here, that the fact that if you are able to find back footages of things that happened in the past, that can actually help you greatly because you can actually find a lot of this interesting information here. Like, let's say if I'm an authority right here and try to look back at what's happening in my particular site, I want to see, have people been actually violating any crowd violations rule? I can easily do so by doing that kind of forensic search in my environment to retrieve back all the footage. So when you retrieve back all the footage, there's a few things that you can easily do so. You can look back at statistics to see how many of these incidents actually happened at that particular site. Or you can actually, even if you want to go down the nitty-gritty, you can actually go and look for the details that's happening in each of the footage. Isn't it correct?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Can I just check with you? When you talk about forensic search, you do mean that these rules do not need to be set up ahead of time, right? Instead we're combing through this after the fact. Is that it?
Exactly.
Wow. Okay. Well, what we're going to show you in a moment, hopefully the video comes up soon, is a video of a forensic search being done on Milestone's UI itself. I think it's just, you should be seeing it now. Yes, I think you should be seeing it now. So let's have a look at this. Jason, maybe you can tell us a little more about what we're seeing.
Yeah, I'm glad the video is back, and now I can actually show you some of the more relevant footage that's coming out from here. So probably let's take a look at that forensic search capability that we just mentioned about. Now, in this particular footage, you can see that I'm actually looking at the same thing that you guys are actually looking at. We are back at the Bosch site where you actually illegally cycled into just now. And I'm going to catch another violation that's going to happen here. I'm probably going to look at situations whereby there's a crowd of 3 or more that's happening in that particular area. And I can easily look back and do the forensic search plugin, like what the audience is looking at, to find back the relevant footage. So remember I was talking about statistics and the ability to drill down to the relevant footage.
Right.
That's what you can see here. When you do that forensic search plugin, you can actually get back the statistic. I can see the number of results that's happening here. And I can also go down to the nitty-gritty side of the things to look for the relevant footage.
I see. Wonderful. And it's amazing to see here that the user interface for the forensic search is also very similar to those, it's exactly the same, in fact, as the Bosch forensic search. And that's also because this plugin was developed by Bosch. And what Jason has just shown you is what that forensic search UI looks like for the end user using it in Milestone. What I want to drill down to actually is the technology behind it that makes it work. That means under the hood, what makes it all tick. So what makes it all work is the video analytics that comes out of the Bosch camera. I spoke earlier about Bosch video analytics. And what's really special about this video analytics is, as you might have seen earlier when I was cycling in and out around the area, you will probably have seen me being outlined as a bounding box. You might have seen a flag. You will also see something like a trajectory moving back and forth. Now, all of this information is being sent as a stream to Milestone's platform. So when all of this arrives at Milestone's platform, it's also being stored and saved. Ideal to be used as a forensic search after the fact. Now, exactly what's happened here is that Bosch has developed a plugin, a Bosch forensic search plugin that plugs into Milestone's platform. And it is here that we're then able to unlock the full capability of the Bosch cameras in Milestone's platform. This is how it stands now. What is going to happen next is that it continues to get more and more powerful. What we're going to show you, what I'm going to talk about now, is something known as Camera Trainer. Camera Trainer is actually the latest step in the evolution of video analytics on Bosch cameras. We saw earlier that it works well on moving objects, as well as predefined objects such as humans, cars, bicycles, so on and so forth. With Camera Trainer, we're now able to determine on a scene-by-scene basis user-defined objects, so training it on a particular scene, on particular objects that appear in the scene. And this actually works really well for user-defined situations and works well for stationary objects as well as objects that are closely clustered together. So that's what makes this so special. This is already released in many of our cameras. Now, let's have a look at what's even coming next in the future. When we look at what's coming next in the future, we have the next generation of open platform cameras. So these are cameras that Bosch calls Inteox cameras. It's based on a platform called OSSA. And on these cameras, we're able to then run third-party software solutions on these cameras as well. The next level above that is something known as object classification, or sometimes traffic detector. We're still working on the name of that, but at the moment, all right, what makes this special is something called is the deep learning training of the scene-specific, not scene-specific in this case, sorry, it's deep learning training on these cameras that allows it to be customized for traffic applications. Even more closely clustered, busy scenes will now be possible, detected on the edge on Bosch cameras. So that's Inteox cameras, and already we have the first generation of these, the MIG, which is a ruggedized camera, as well as the Autodome, which is a PTZ camera. These Inteox cameras are already released and already integrated with Milestone, of course. I wouldn't be talking about it if they weren't. So yeah, so that's what we have here. Let's come back a little bit to that camera trainer, actually.
Exactly.
Yeah, because when I mentioned the specifics about camera trainer, it does seem a little bit niche, like what user-defined, scene-specific, but actually, well, there's one issue that we mentioned at the very beginning, which is flooding, which we haven't yet solved, and it is here that camera trainer plays its biggest role. Water is shapeless, it is formless, and it doesn't take the shape of any particular, it's not a car, it's not a human, it's going to look different no matter what scene you're at. And it's exactly in this situation, flooding, that we are able to make full use of camera trainer. So let's have a look here. We have actually set up an aquarium, and it is in this aquarium that we're simulating flooding. We're not detecting the water. Instead, we're detecting specialized markers that we have set out against the aquarium wall here. So if you have a look here, as the water is being poured in and the markers become obscured, let me know, by the way, if you ever have flooding in crystal clear waters. That never happens, all right? But as the markers get obscured, what happens here is then the camera is sending out an alarm that, hey, the markers are being obscured, there is a rule violation, which we can treat this as a flooding detection. Jason, can you tell me more about this?
Well, I think you have mentioned quite a big chunk of it, and I think you are exactly right about most of the things. I especially like the part that you say that water is formless, right? So it's actually very hard for you to detect flooding most of the time. But I guess what you have mentioned using the technology from Bosch earlier on, using camera trainer, we can actually do a little bit of situations or handling here. Like what you've seen here, we have actually put stickers on this aquarium to mimic the markers. So don't this aquarium actually reminds you of maybe the large drainage canals or tunnels that we are probably seeing around in Singapore sometimes. And when flooding occurs, it can get a bit scary, right?
Yeah.
So imagine if these stickers, or in the case of the real life scenario, that's replaced by a physical marker. And we actually do a rule to say that whenever we see 2 or less markers on that kind of canal or drainage, we be alerted to get an alarm. And that's exactly what we have here. Whenever there's actually less than 2 markers, we are actually getting an alarm in the real time straight away. And that's exactly what distributed side is about, doing the active alarm management and being able to do so. But of course, in the earlier conversation, we also talked about active alarm management is not the only part of the story. We also need to be able to do forensic search and get back the footage really well. So over here, you can see that we are also, again, able to do forensic search really easily by using the plugin that was actually present in the Milestone UI to find back footages of whenever flooding occurs in this particular aquarium using the same rules that we talked about. Now, I have to say that all this can only speak volumes about the kind of integration work that Milestone and Bosch have all these years. Am I right to say that, probably, Jeremy?
Yes, you're exactly right. It is this close integration and close cooperation between Bosch and Milestone over the years that we're so proud of, that has enabled all of these technological solutions that we have here shown you. let's actually talk a little bit more about this, this collaboration, because I have my colleague on the line who is able to tell us a little bit more. My colleague, Christian Schmitzner, the Senior Global Integration Manager in Bosch, who manages our account with Milestone, is here to talk through a little bit more of this. Christian, please.
Hi, Jeremy. Hi, Jason. Thank you for the introduction. And actually, I'm very thankful that you presented those super nice and super interesting use cases already. I'm in fact the global integration manager within Bosch for Milestone. And I have the pleasure to stress what Jeremy and Jason already showed you. And I would also like to give you some more insights in the integration and in the collaboration in the next few minutes. So basically, how do we at Bosch see the future in smart cities? And how do we help to support the use cases that Jeremy and Jason just shown? As it has already been stressed, right? I mean, first of all, it's very important to understand the semantics of a video scene, to be able to extract some data and to provide that data to a video management system. In this case, to provide it to Milestone X Protect. All our cameras have analytics on the edge, and we are able to provide certain properties that can be made use of. We talked about the properties. I mean, it's object classification, speed, color. We are even able to send out geoposition of specific objects, which might also be relevant for safe city use cases. This is available across the full Bosch camera portfolio, right? So all our cameras come with analytics on the edge, and even on top to the properties that you see on the left-hand side. Of course, we are working in that area. We are active in researching, and there are much more properties to come in the future. With our integration work, we combine those 2 points into a seamless integration into Milestone X Protect. And by doing so, we improve the level of security for safer cities. And we are also able to support new use cases and applications beyond security. I also picked, let's say, 2 topics that I would like to present a bit deeper. The most important topic, and we already saw that, is the forensic search, right? You already saw the capabilities. You can break free from the ordinary. You can define whatever search criteria you want to search for, even if it was not defined when you recorded the data. How do you do that? Basically, as I said before, the cameras all have video analytics on board. The cameras send out a metadata stream, and that's recorded in the Milestone system. On the other hand side, it's not just a Bosch functionality. We also, Milestone introduced that nice centralized search 2 years back now, almost. And we simply make use of the possibilities that Milestone provides. We wrote that plugin, and with the plugin and the functionality that you already saw, we accomplished the task to provide forensic search, Bosch forensic search, also to the Milestone end users and end customers. And it's all in a unified way and nicely wrapped into the Milestone user interface. Another touch of intelligence on the edge is basically our video-based fire detection. We have our Aviotech cameras that are capable of detecting fire very early. They have a really low false alarm rate. It's outstanding low light performance. And since it's a video camera that is capable of detecting fire starting very early, you also have the possibility to perform root cause analysis when you look at the recorded video. And on top, you can repurpose basically the camera to simply being a security camera. That's all integrated, seamlessly working with Milestone. It's a pretty old integration already from 2018, but still I think it's relevant, and it's becoming more and more relevant if you're going into that area of smarter and safer cities. Now, as we already learned, AIoT devices from Bosch, they are all seamlessly integrated into X-Protect, and our devices help to customize applications with our machine learning technology, the camera trainer, as we already saw with the flooding example. We help to convert data into information at the edge. And by this, we improve safety and security and uncover new opportunities in smart city applications. And just for completeness, and just to mention that here as well, because it might be relevant for some specific use cases, Bosch not only provides video cameras, intelligent video cameras, we also have intrusion products which are seamlessly integrated into Milestone. And we also have access control, which is also integrated into X-Protect. Now, coming a bit to the, let's say, to the more technical points of my presentation, and to give you also a bit of an outlook what to expect in the near future. All our integrations or the plugins that you just saw, those are Bosch products. And we heavily utilize the possibilities that Milestone provide with the MIP SDK. So there's a possibility to write plugins that integrate then seamlessly into Milestone, and basically all the use cases and the examples that you saw make use of that functionality and that possibility. We provide our plugins via the Milestone marketplace, which is a great opportunity and a great possibility to have a single point of entry for finding solutions and puzzling solutions together, basically. Of course, the forensic search plugin is there. We have a plugin that helps visualizing the metadata and provides some advanced features which are possible with our metadata. We have, of course, also a de-warping plugin for our panoramic cameras available. And all our cameras are natively integrated in terms of video analytics. Now, what's to come in the future? As I said before, I mean, we are still working, of course, in improving the analytics on the edge. And in the same way, we are working on improving our plugins and our integration. So all the major plugins expect updates in the near future. So ETA is the next quarter, still this year. Now, a glimpse into the integration highlights. I mean, of course, the cameras are seamlessly integrated, but there is more, right? We also have value add as a complete system. And as I already said before, we have that enhanced metadata plugin that helps in rendering and displaying the metadata in X-Protect Smart Client, but on top it provides some further functionalities like intelligent tracking control. Many of our PTC cameras have the possibility or the ability to follow objects, and that's also working within smart client. Our ruggedized cameras, the MIG cameras, for example, they have a wiper and often also a washer. And one of our plugins provides the possibility to even trigger the wiper based on a milestone rule set. So let's imagine you have a rain sensor somewhere. You can set up a rule in X-Protect to trigger the wiper of the camera just when it starts raining, something like that. And then Milestone just integrated the password management with our cameras. We have also an integration with the Milestone native metadata search, which covers different use cases than the forensic search. And just recently, the Milestone team implemented and released the firmware push with our cameras. That means that latest firmware versions can be pushed to the cameras via the Milestone software. As a general rule of thumb, when it comes to sensor or to camera integration, basically you just have in mind that as a no-brainer that the cameras are supported out of the box. But we all know that support is a very nice thing and that they are working. But in the end, the customer and the end user, they always need a certification. And therefore, we target to have that as soon as possible, but it should be maximum 2 months after we release a new camera. And the same applies to new firmware releases. As an outlook for the global and in general, the cooperation that we have, of course, we want to still continue the path that we are on. We want to work closely together, leverage our platinum partnership, and just 2 concrete examples that are to be expected in the near future. As I said before, of course, we are improving our analytics on the edge. We're going to introduce new object classifications. Those will, of course, also be integrated into X-Protect. And we are working on improving the user experience for the forensic search plugin. There are small improvements to be done, but I think that's a big and a great deal then for the end customer and for the user of that plugin. And with that outlook, I would like to hand back to Jeremy and Jason.
Thank you, Christian, for the excellent presentations on what to expect in the future integrations between Bosch and Milestone. Surely, Jeremy, that actually gives us a lot of confidence what to expect from the both companies in the near future, right?
I completely agree, yes.
Now, given what we have achieved over the past few years, I think it's only right that we have a successful customer reference to share with the audience here today. So for that, I'd like to introduce to Olga from SAIMOS, who will be sharing some of this interesting technology from Bosch, Milestone, and SAIMOS, and bring you through a customer reference that we have together. Over to you, Olga.
Hi, everyone. Jeremy, Jason, thank you for the nice introduction and for the nice webinar so far. I would like to introduce myself briefly. My name is Olga Tsonkova, and I'm a license manager at SAIMOS Video Analytics. Today, I will have the pleasure to introduce to you 2 reference projects that we did together with our colleagues from Bosch and Milestone. First, let me just say a couple of words about SAIMOS Video Analytics. We are headquartered in Vienna, in Austria, and we have staff on the ground in Germany, Denmark, and Netherlands. We also operate offices in Cairo and Abu Dhabi. Our solutions are globally available through our partner network. For the APAC region, we are working closely together with our partners from Securex, based in Hong Kong. They're responsible for Hong Kong, China, and Southeast Asia. And for the APAC region, we're also working with Sky DS, based in Singapore. Something very important that I would like to highlight from the very beginning, this is our real seamless integration into Milestone X Protect. We are also Milestone Gold channel partner, Milestone Gold technology partner, and on the last physical MIPS in Copenhagen in 2019, we got awarded as a Milestone Solution Partner of the Year for the EMEA region. Thank you for that, Milestone. And also I would like to mention that we are purely Intel CPU driven. There are no GPUs required. Now let's take a look into our system setup. Basically, it is very flexible, as we can run on the cloud, we can run on your data center, as well as we are available on IoT Edge hardware devices like these ones here. Some of them, they come pre-installed with SAIMOS and Milestone already. Some of our algorithms we have moved to the camera for the cameras that are running security and safety things operational system like Bosch cameras, for example. We also do support various 3D sensors. We have integrated LiDAR and radar as well. We have integration with Bosch IVA, and we do support also traditional 2D cameras. Now let's move onwards to the first project that we have implemented together with our partners from Bosch and Milestone. The customer here is one of the world's top 10 largest steel producers, and they're having 670 subsidiaries worldwide with more than 100,000 employees. And their annual revenue is more than 28 billion euros. So a solution that the customer was requiring here was the dynamic blurring solution of SAIMOS, which we have provided combined with Bosch cameras and implemented within the Milestone environment. So in this use case, the customer wanted to achieve to ensure privacy for their employees and visitors, and also to align with the GDPR requirements. Here on the first video, you can see that it's not blurred, and the second video is blurred, so everything that is moving is getting blurred. This is our scrambling module combined with Bosch cameras within the Milestone environment. Our next project that we are going to mention today is Chemistry Park Operator. This is Germany's largest operator of chemistry parks.
Olga?
Yeah?
Olga, could I interrupt you for just a second? I think we can't quite see your PowerPoint. Could you full screen it? Just giving Olga a couple moments here to get the PowerPoint up.
For the audience who are following us today, if you have some questions, just feel free to type in the chat box. We are seeing a very healthy build of questions, and we'll be happy to attend to them at the end of the session.
Do you see it now?
Can I just check with the behind-the-scenes folks? Olga, could you bring it to presentation mode?
Yes, it's in the presentation mode. Let me check.
Perhaps you have multiple screens and we're actually just seeing the regular mode.
Now? No?
Yeah, I think you've got multiple screens and we're not seeing the correct screen. So could you share the screen on which the presentation mode is on?
Now is it all right?
So let's have a look, see if the screen is coming up. It still looks like the regular screen.
Yeah, Olga, why not?
Yeah.
Probably you just run through the slides with us through the screen that you just shared. I think it's probably also interesting that we can look through the information here, right?
That's all right.
Yes, I think let's proceed like what we have. I think in the rehearsal we didn't have this technical issue. Yes, moving back to the chemistry park customer. So as I said, the Germany's largest operator of chemistry parks. And they're having 3 sites with more than 5,000 employees and annual revenue only for operations, more than 1 billion euro. Two solutions we have provided here, like those ones we are mentioning. First one is passenger occupancy check for vehicles that are entering their facilities, having in mind that a couple of thousand of vehicles are entering the facilities from different entrances every day. The second solution is to protect the sites of their own port against unwanted intrusion from water side with Bosch thermal cameras and with radar. So in my next slides, I'm going to take a closer look into the first solution that we have provided for the chemistry park operator, the vehicle occupancy check. So here, with a special camera and illumination setup, we were able to look through tainted windows in the car. For example, here on the first photo, you can see that the window on the back seat is tainted, it's not transparent. And then with the special camera and illumination setup that we have identified there, it was possible to see through the tainted window. And even though here you can see that the person is wearing a mask, it's again, algorithms were identifying there is a human inside the car, except of the driver. So this was requested to avoid illegal entrances into the sites, and also was saving a lot of time to the guards and the operators in the control rooms by checking all those cars. And here Milestone Interconnect comes into place, allowing observing multiple gates at multiple sites. And our both projects that we're mentioning here are integrated with Milestone Interconnect. Let me move to the next slide. Shall I try again to do the presentation mode? Is it visible now? So the next solution that we have provided is the peer protection of the customer, because they were having their own port and they wanted to protect it from unwanted intrusion from water side, in the same time enabling the vessels to load and unload on the port and the crew to use the landside facilities on the port. So in the control room, the operators are having PTZ object tracking within Milestone X Protect via SAIMOS Control Center. SAIMOS Control Center is our full-fledged web GIS component, which is also seamlessly integrated into Milestone X Protect. The location data of those objects we are getting from Bosch IVA. That is running on Bosch thermal cameras and from radar devices as well. And in case of loading and unloading operations on the port, the alarm zones shall be disarmed and not to get unnecessary alarms when doing those operations. So this could be done either manually by clicking on the map. I'm going to show you this in a very short video in my next slide, or it could be done automatically via intercom calls. And after a certain amount of time, the alarm zones are getting rearmed again. Okay, so here is a short video. I'm going to run it in a while. So these are the alarm zones that are drawn here, and the small spots, these are objects. This is the view from Bosch thermal cameras. Now, when I run the video, you can see that we can define here the time to rearm the zone again, and by clicking on the map, the zone on the relevant alarm zone, it's getting disarmed. And the object tracking data of the objects that are moving here, as you see, are received from Bosch IVA and from radar devices as well. Then when this time is up, the zone is rearmed again. And the alarms that we're seeing here that are generated again from those moving objects with the locational data that we're getting from Bosch IVA and the radars, they're going directly into Milestone Alarm Manager. So basically this brings me to the end of my presentation. So all of the solutions that we have presented today, they are enabled, they're implemented via Milestone as an open platform. So thank you for your time. I hope you enjoyed my presentation. Nevertheless, the technical issues. So here are our contact details, mine and of our founder and CEO, Karim El Hanafi. Please feel free to reach out for more information, and please free to reach out to our partners as well. So Jeremy, Jason, back to you.
All right. Thank you so much, Olga. Wonderful presentation there. So what we have right now is a Q&A section. And for this Q&A section, we've actually got, of course, Jason and myself based here in Singapore. Christian is also on the line from Germany, and Olga will be in Austria. So we've got everyone from not quite all over the world, but two very different parts of the world. So for this Q&A section, we're actually going to start off with, we've got some questions. I've gathered up some of the questions here. We won't be able to get to all of the questions, but for those that we can't quite get to, of course, we'll take them offline. Some of the questions here, the first few are related to Milestone Interconnect. So Jason, maybe you'd like to answer this. So I'll give them all to you. How do people from central sites, how are they able to manage the remote site configuration in Milestone Interconnect? The same person also asks, as I understand, the analytics events from cameras would come to the remote site, then they are forwarded to the central site. And lastly, we've got another question related to interconnect. Do you have to connect all cameras on a site to interconnect? And how is this licensed? How is this licensed? So yeah, Jason, any answer on those?
Yeah, very great questions, and I think there's a lot of thought probably put into these questions. And thanks for the guy who's actually, the lady who's asking this question, because I think it shows that a lot of follow through today's talk and presentation have been made before such a question is being asked. So let me just try to take this question in parts. Firstly, I think, do you really need to connect all the cameras in the site via interconnect to the central location? The interesting part of this is that you don't really need to do so, because using Milestone Interconnect, you can choose to just connect a few cameras, or you can just connect a whole variety of all the cameras in the site. It's up to you. You can choose whatever that makes it work. And in terms of the licensing, how it's being done is done by a per camera licensing. So for instance, probably today you have a remote site and you only want to probably connect 3 cameras to the central location, and you have another remote site that you have to connect 5 to this central location. They will all be done on a licensing model that is based on per camera. Now, in terms, I think the other parts of the question pertains a bit more to the architecture of it. How do you then actually do the kind of configuration, connectivity of it? I'm also glad to say that Milestone has actually quite a few options for that. Interconnect is the one that we talked about a lot during this presentation today, and that works on to connecting to the camera directly. And of course, there's other kind of architecture that's available. For instance, in Milestone, we have this architecture that's called a federated architecture that allows you to connect to the site. And in this case, these are probably the kind of site architecture that most people are more familiar with, whereby you have a central location site that's connected to the remote site and not really connecting directly to the camera. So depending on the needs and wants of a camera, Milestone has a variety of technology and video architecture that suit the customer needs.
Thank you so much, Jason. All right, so let's have a look at our next question here. The next question here is, I think this one is for Christian. So the question itself is, where do I get the forensic search plugin? Which actually, you kind of already managed to answer that in your presentation, but maybe I can add on to this. What's the licensing like for the forensic search plugin? Is it free, Christian?
Yes, it's free. Yeah, it's free. The plugin is free, and also the analytics on the camera is free. So
Thank you so much,
it's an easy answer.
Good. So that was a fast one. The next question, let's have a look. Let's see. Olga. So this question is for you. How can you see through the tinted window in the customer reference? Do you have an answer to this?
Yes, thank you for this question. It's actually a very good question, and this was a very interesting project. So basically, this was a part of our R&D works that we did to identify a suitable setup that is going to work for this project, and all of that resulted in identifying the right combination of camera setup, illumination, and filters, so that we were able to look through the tinted windows. Please feel free to contact us for more information or technical details to take this question also offline in the matter of saving time today, as we are running out of time, right? So back to you, Jeremy, Jason.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, the next question is, are there any other Inteox cameras coming out? Will they be integrated with Milestone? Well, this one I guess I'll take. For the Inteox cameras, as I said earlier, in Asia we already have two of them out, a MIG, which is the ruggedized camera, as well as the Autodome. And as I understand it, sometime in September, we have two others, the fixed dome Inteox camera, as well as the, I think it's the bullet Inteox camera. So two other form factors of these cameras are coming out in Asia. Now, those cameras, of course, will also be integrated by design with, already integrated with Milestone when they launch, which actually brings me to my next question. And if I have a look at this question, this one, I guess, is again for Christian. What do you mean by firmware certification? And here, what I guess the question is, what is the difference between supported by design and certified, whether the cameras or the firmwares?
Yeah, so that's always an important question and distinction, basically. So Milestone provides a generic driver for all our cameras, right? There are no specific checks for device models or firmware versions. So basically, as I said, as a no-brainer, all cameras, all new firmwares are supported by design and should work out of the box. Nevertheless, Milestone also provides a database on the web page which shows the supported devices, and this database also contains firmware versions. And this is the basis for the support, right? So if you run into an issue, which most likely will never happen, but in rare cases, you might run into issues with Bosch cameras in Milestone, and you connect with the Milestone support, they will ask for the firmware version running on the camera. And that is the difference between the certification. So we try to get all new firmwares tested with the Milestone system, and by doing the tests officially, we get a certification that the firmware is tested, running, and you will also get support for that firmware version. So it's basically just the official blessing from Milestone side that the firmware works with X-Protect.
All right. Thank you so much, Christian. The next question I have is, I guess this one's for you, Jason. Does Milestone work with any other hardware/software partners in the smart city space?
With that, I think that would be actually something interesting I'd probably like to share with the audience here. Milestone actually thrive on being a very open architecture platform. And I guess most of us probably are familiar with a lot of these things as like Apple App Store or probably Google Play Store, whereby you can actually go in and find the different kind of solutions that's available. Now, the same thing actually works for Milestone too. If you have the chance, I think you can take a look at the Milestone Marketplace. And in the Marketplace platform, you can actually easily see the different kinds of partners in the hardware and software area that we work with in the different kind of verticals. And I actually encourage all of you to take a look there, because that will be somewhere you can find very interesting solutions on.
The marketplace?
The marketplace.
And it's, so just to point out again, this is the same marketplace that the Bosch plugins, the forensic search plugins are also found. That's correct, right?
Exactly.
Exactly. Okay, good. That's great. So the next question I have is, again, for Olga. Can you also integrate other sensor technologies into the SAIMOS control center? It's for Olga.
Yeah, thank you for this question. Again, very good, interesting question. Again, will require a little bit more attention, but what I could say is that yes, we have our SAIMOS communicator, which is allowing us to integrate other sensor technologies as well. For example, we have integrated alarm sensor that is monitoring emergency exit doors. So in case such a door is opened, an alarm is forwarded to Milestone and also is visually displayed on a GIS map. And for example, in case there is a camera observing this door, we can also pull up the live stream from Milestone, within Milestone. So this would be the answer to the question. I hope it answers the question of the person who is asking.
Yes, thank you.
Back
thank
to
you so
you.
much, Olga.
Yeah.
So, wow, we have time for one more question. Let me just have a look. This question, let me see. Okay. So this last question, I think I will take it. Is Camera Trainer available on all cameras, and what's the licensing like? Of course, we showed you the Camera Trainer. Camera Trainer is not quite available on all the cameras, but it's available on many cameras right now. So internally, we have something known as a product platform, and Camera Trainer is available on this CPP, the product platform, CPP 6 and above. So, so it does mean that when you're just looking at the product page, you may not necessarily know if Camera Trainer is supported, but right now, increasing numbers of our cameras now support Camera Trainer. Anyway, the good news is Camera Trainer licensing is required, but it's also free. So that's the story for Camera Trainer. Good. So let me just quickly see here. I think it looks to me like we've actually run to the end of our session here. As we finish off this session, I really want to thank, well, I want to thank all of you for tuning in. That's the first. I also want to thank our guests who have dialed in, Christian and Olga. Thank you so much for dialing in. And as we finish off, if you would like to connect with us, I think we're going to have an overlay come out where you can actually just use this overlay to connect to, that's right, connect to our LinkedIn pages, whether that's the Bosch one, the Milestone one, or the SAIMOS one. So that's it. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.